Welcome to the master plan of Viksit Bharat 2047. I'll not take much time into explaining all of them, but maybe $5 trillion economy is something which we all know. And this is 2020 to 2030 is India's decade. That is also again something which you all know. And Viksit Bharat, which is completely taking over a corner to corner each part of the country currently, is something we all are listening and seeing. Huge number of development which has happened over last 10 years. When we move ahead to the idea of having a developed nation, what does it mean to people's life? It's not about company, PSUs, governments, parties, or notion or narration of that time or that period. It's about people. It's about their power and capability which they want to compete with the global powers. So विश्व शक्ति बनने का सपना या विकसित भारत बनने का सपना वो कैसा दिखता है लोगों के कॉन्सेप्ट में और लोगों की आम रियल जिंदगी में, that is what it is conveying to be there. And if you will see $5 trillion economy, which is saying that what is going to come into my personal life and my daily life of all of you who are listening to me online and physically, is adding down to per capita income. And when you are competing with Viksit Bharat and becoming superpower, this notion of our Honorable Prime Minister that India has to be superpower in the next 3 years, next 5 years it is going to become what it could not achieve into last 75 years, then what does it mean? Are we planning to become a superpower to attack on some country? No. We are planning to become superpower to uplift the life of 168 crore people. And by 2047, if you will calculate, it will be 161 to 168 crore people. And how do we change life of people? आपकी ज़िंदगी बहुत बेसिक से बदलती है. And first and the foremost is the income. So the per capita income today is around $2,300 in India. And can you imagine if when we say विकसित हो जाएगा और विकसित भारत हो जाएगा, then what should be the benchmark for that development commercially? Somewhere around 12,000 crore rupees, 12,000 US dollar per person per capita income. And this is now in 2024. So by the time 2100 to 2300 per capita income of one average Indian reaches to 12,000, what would be the inflation and what would be the income benchmark of that particular country, which is today 12,000 rupees, somewhere around 15,000. So आपको अपना benchmark 15,000 US dollar से ऊपर रखना पड़ेगा. And how much time we have to do all this is 2030, somebody says 2047. If you look at decarbonization of complete India, then you will say 2070. So let me take you to the journey that where the impact, growth, pattern and threat lies on the economy. This has been known to all of you. January 2024 has been warmest month of the year. Why? Is because of the climate change which is real. So if we are not developing, अगर आप जिस गति से बढ़ रहे हो 8.4% per annum and you are expected to grow at 9.4% to become superpower, you are becoming at the same time another China and another America. So if the sense of growth, if the sensitivity and the sensitivity towards climate, resilience, environment is not entailed, it not pragmatic, it not sensible, viable, then you are going to become this. So climate change is not a thought, it's a threat. You have recently seen how Dubai has gone through, and to meet this by 2047 and to conclude this by 2070, we will be needing $10 trillion economy. So now I am zeroing down to numbers is like today we are 3.8 crore, 3.8 trillion dollar economy. And this $3.8 trillion economy aims to reach at $10 trillion economy only in climate. I am not talking about the mainstream economy. Mainstream is $35 trillion economy. How do we reach to this $10 trillion economy if we do not consistently do a growth and we build investment into this sector? Today, we attract around $40 billion US dollar as an investment per se, vis-a-vis an investment required to reach this target 233 to 255. So the gap of around 140 is need to be filled. And how much time we have for this? If I disseminate, I don't want to jump down to 2070 or 2050. I just want to be very, very specific into next 5 year and next 5 year, 2026 to 2030 and 2030 to 35. Let's be practical. In this, we will be needing around 255 in first 5 year and 265 in next 5 year 2030. And currently what we get as in climate investment is around 44 billion US dollar. So how this $3.8 trillion economy is aiming this high is the information that we wish to give. The master plan of Viksit Bharat is not only around the notions, around the emotions, it's also around changing the world order of economics by tapping 1% of circular economy. So all of you would be able to very clearly see by 2030, circular economy of globe will be 4.5 trillion. And out of 4.5 trillion, if 1% is tapped by India, how much it adds incrementally into next 5 years is 225 US dollar. And 225 billion US dollar brings us close to 235 to 255, which we needed by 2026. This takes us to the growth story of how infra and green energy is going to come into the picture and play this vital important role to create opportunities across sectors, right from aviation, railway, textile, leather, biotechnology, chemicals, fertilizer, everything, agriculture, wellness, hospitality, tourism, each one of them. They have two things in common: energy, power and mobility. All of these are under scrutiny. All of them, they are looking for sustainable, greener, cleaner alternates, and this is how the growth story works forward. By 2070, if government is focusing on EV ecosystem, we are going to cut down what? Sustainable amount of two significant numbers. One is the import oil bill, and second is the expenditure on logistics, 17 to 14% right now. If we have aimed to reach around 1 digit, then 7 to 9%. Next. In this, government will expanding and strengthening not only electric mobility, but also for the current mandate, hydrogen, wind, solar, everything which can reduce our oil import bill and everything which can reduce our consumption of our GDP 14 to 17% to a single digit 7 to 9%. How? Have we achieved any of the benchmark? One of the very significant example which I can give, because I was personally involved into it, by giving a blended financing instrument for climate financing of around 5,000 crore rupees to upgrade 5,500 kilometer highways of India, Bharatmala and Sagarmala, on e-highway with the stations after each 55 kilometer which can dispense hydrogen. It can also store hydrogen. It will have electric mobility chargers, and it will also have ethanol provisions. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to cut out and come out from the fossil fuel trap by having petrol pumps, and these are the future petrol pumps who are going to be very, very competitive, not only technically but commercially going to change the future. And how these are based on the reforms is by today you need a license to own a petrol pump, but you don't need a license to own a charging station. So this is a significant amount of reform. What it needed is detailing. What it needed is a financing model which is there. Its name is annuity hybrid e-mobility. It's a derivative of HAM, hybrid annuity model, introduced by Sri Gadkari in 2015. It helps us to upgrade a normal highway into e-highway. with the capability to run electric buses, cars, and everything what you need. Climate financing demands a certain number of envision, and these futures are only based on the circular economy definitions, also on how we are going to make our banks, NBFCs, and other financial institutions to come together and act along to give a credit outlay, new instruments, new funding models, and new ideas to look at the project level, company level, solution level, household level, and industry level. Going forward, if you will see the number of urbanization, every minute 30 people from a village in India is coming to city. Where do we have house for them? Where do we have water for them? Where do we have energy, transport, medicine? Everything is required. And to meet this, if you will see the calculation of $35 trillion is 240,000 US dollar will be spent by one person who has taken birth after 2000 as per the BCG recent study in India in his lifetime. 240,000 US dollar multiplied by our population at 2047, 168 crore people, it totals up to $38 trillion. So that's the market which India is holding, but how do we tap on this market economically? It depends much more on the multilateral and how the needs are being taken care. So energy, independence, second mobility, and decarbonization are few keys on which we are going to work, and I'm very, very happy to say that in this regard, as of now, into last 10 years of electric mobility, we have not seen a private bank coming into the picture and funding infra which is electric. They have been very reluctant to fund vehicle, but now it is been easy. HDFC funded 3,672 crore rupees in a PPP blended financing mode to do a credit outlay to take the infrastructure construction cost of entire Bharatmala and Sagarmala from Delhi to Kanyakumari. These are the expansion routes. You can see 272 kilometer and 225 kilometer are already prototyped. Technical trial has been very, very successful between Delhi, Jaipur, and Delhi, Agra, and now it is expanding to Kanyakumari with both stretches from towards Calcutta towards Mumbai. Our Prime Minister's vision is to have an environmental consciousness economics, and this new economy of New India, New Bharat, is not only creating an ecosystem of sustainability, but it is also creating an opportunity for all businesses across to search and look for greener and cleaner alternatives. World largest democracy, in interest of time, I will not be able to go to democracy and demographics, but we will definitely be able to see and quote one of the small but very significant pilot, because climate and health are two very important things. Sometimes it looked not profitable, so it is often ignored. And in last 75 years, what we have not addressed, India is very well calibrated and placed to attempt now. Digital innovation and sustainable health tech action is one of those pilots which is doing calibration of assetization of healthcare data to bring on a monetizable platform by doing pilot into these 9 states. These are technically advanced and going to give a lot of input to drive device and drug discovery in India. Also, the evidence-based project which is going to take the thirst forward to do each and every pilot in the country, in the notion to bring much more evidence-based policy making rather than doing a copy-paste from a developed country. I wish not to go into 2 trillion circular economy, it will again take a lot of time. But in the interest only, last point which I want to give you for the global aspect is India is not doing the decarbonization alone. Each and every country across the globe is doing these trials, and they are trying to decarbonize their transport and their logistic. Germany has done trial of 10 kilometer and 12 kilometer, you can see on the screen, while India has done trial of 225 and 272 kilometers. Delhi, Agra and Delhi, Jaipur. Germany has a 2020 target and 2022 target. We did not did the third trial. Instead of that, we have done the third generation charging station. You will be surprised to look at the cost. 5,500 kilometers by India by 2030 and 4,000 kilometers by Germany into upgraded into e-highway. If you look at the cost is 1 crore per kilometer in India and 22 crore rupees per kilometer, the Autobahn highway. It is supported by government. At the other side, in India, it is supported by annuity hybrid. It's a PPP model. So we are very well calibrated and placed to do these reforms and these changes on the basis and thought of reform, perform, transform, where we not only conclude, we initiate, but we also deliver a new way of policy making by doing very innovative, not only business model, but also R&D to commercialization of a new technology. So with this, I bring two of my very eminent guests. If somebody can add chairs to the dais, we will be able to welcome, and I'll ask my host to bring two of our most eminent speakers together to carry this conversation forward, that where we are placed in terms of demand and where we are placed in terms of having alternatives and solutions for a large economy of $3.8 trillion, which is going to grow $5 trillion very soon, and also poise and aim to grow at $35 trillion by 2047. So please welcome both of our esteemed guests. We already know about them. Give a round of applause for both of them and let's start the conversation forward. First of all, welcome. I think audience, they also wanted to welcome you. You were not there in the beginning. And to start with, I think you will be able to give some perspective of how these growing economy has a demand of decarbonization, and what are the solutions and what type of economic reform which you are seeing across sectors to reach to this sort of transition.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to share some of these perspectives with all of you, and excellent presentation from an India perspective. Obviously, we are on an excellent trajectory. Couple of things to keep in mind. We've modeled some of these climate scenarios, and one of the key learnings for us is that we have a vision to get to 10 trillion, and obviously as we work towards the Viksit Bharat ambition, there is no doubt that India has a tremendous runway to grow much larger, in fact to become the third largest or even the second largest economy. However, one thing that might set us back is climate change, and we modeled different scenarios. One scenario called RCP6, which is roughly translated to a temperature rise of 3 degrees by the end of the century, essentially will cause a cumulative GDP loss of $35 trillion by 2070 alone. And why am I giving this number is because the traditional view that GDP will continue to grow, climate change will happen on the side, is no longer true. In fact, it will start to eat into our growth. How will this happen? Number one, there is a significant issue with heat stress. We are already hearing about extreme heat warnings in many parts of the country. Second is water stress, right? 60% of our districts are already water stressed. Then you have things like seawater rise, which will take away some of the productive land. And most importantly, where we have built infrastructure or are building infrastructure, some of that starts to go away, and we are forced to spend our infrastructure spend in rebuilding infrastructure or repairing infrastructure. So, to that extent, there's a significant downside that we can see. However, with all the steps that were outlined in the presentation, there is an opportunity to turn this into a significant growth story also. And how does that happen? Decarbonization, as you rightly said, is the key to this. India imports 80% of its energy needs, so it's also right thing to do from a balance of payments and cost perspective also. And the third thing is, when we say, so if we by the time we get to the Viksit Bharat goal of 2047, if all goes well, we would have reduced our dependence on imported oil to a large extent. In fact, ideally maybe even zero. And what does that mean? It actually will give us lot more opportunities from a growth and revenue perspective, and not just limit them to energy transition or just the energy bit, right? There's obviously, once you have energy transition, you can do a lot more. And I'll speak about that in just a few minutes, but why don't I hand it back to you?
So one follow-up question with you is, when we are talking about energy, you interestingly said $35 trillion loss by the climate change and the threats which we are seeing. In this economics, is it viable to not bank upon a very bullish and very mandate-oriented policy framework to be deployed?
A great question. So the policy framework, would have probably two roles. If you think about the carrot and the stick, or the positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, the negative reinforcement could obviously be a very strong regulatory bit that mandates a certain use and puts in penalties, and carbon pricing obviously is going to be key to this, right? Where you say, for industries that are not transitioning fast enough, you apply some sort of a carbon pricing so that their products and services become more expensive, right? So that's one way to do it.
Right.
But then there are also positive reinforcements. Some of these that come from incentives that the government is able to offer, both in terms of tax and in terms of transition finance.
Okay.
Right? And the transition finance obviously will be relatively more patient capital, not grants, still something that makes IRR, but various financing schemes that make it more attractive to go through the transition. So that's how I see the role of regulation and the government.
Very interestingly placed panel, I would say, because Amitabh ji will be able to add a lot of alternatives, lot of solutions, which is at the solving problem side. But still these solutions have challenges: policy framework, innovation, challenges of adaptation, challenges of commercialization. How do you see, in given scenario, when we require a $3.8 trillion economy transition into a green economy transition, and definitely it cannot happen overnight. So the path which we have taken and the path which we should have taken, there is a huge gap between this, and I think you don't need to, and we do not need to speak on that, because we all know that the path is not meeting, the gap is very huge. At this stage of time, what are the 4 or 5 basic prescriptions that you would like to add? But first we would like to know about you, your company and the solution, and then this is my follow-up question.
Yeah, first of all, good evening, and thank you very much for inviting my company, WAPCOS, and myself to speak and share our experience here in a very distinguished people who are sharing their experiences. So I come from WAPCOS, and my company is under Ministry of Jal Shakti, and it, in many ways, my organization is unique from other PSUs in a sense that it was formed in 1969, so we have completed over 50 years, and we started our operation from Afghanistan back in 1969 to work in core sectors of water, power and infrastructure, and we have continued to build on that journey, and now we have diversified in many ways. Now, to put things in context to today's discussion, first of all, I must congratulate you for a very nice presentation where you have laid out the roadmap for Viksit Bharat with a lot of insight to the things which are required, and obviously the task is very huge. And at the same time, sir has also very well described the demand side things, and of course the pull in the form of the climate, which is going to be adversely impacting the whole process. So here we are in a situation where we have a task cut out for all of us. Then we have some challenges on that road to achieve to that target. So as far as we are concerned, in my opinion, the climate change and the other adverse impact are basically we all talking about the decarbonization and the greenhouse gas emissions, and we all know that mostly they come from the way we generate energy. And ultimately, for any goal which you are envisaging in next 20-30 years to be achieved, energy would be the key driver, because without energy we cannot think of anything. And then whole lot of things have been talked about the way energy transition is going to take place. I would just focus, if I may continue, that we are talking very aggressively about the renewables, like for example the solar and the wind. But we forget that in a project, ultimately all these things will be achieved by a project, and projects have its own project cycle. And when you are bringing some change in a rather paradigm shift in the form of renewables, we have to look at very closely as to what are the alternatives and how it will be translated into. It's easy to talk about this much of gigawatt of solar will be by 2030 it will solve all the problems, but how it would be translated onto the ground, where we would like to share our experiences. As of now, because I am concentrating more on energy, because this is the main area where we have to focus as far as the environmental sustainability is concerned. So electricity doesn't have the shelf life. It has to be consumed as it produced. So you have to have, and the demand is not uniform throughout the day. So sometimes in the daytime it's very less. In the evening we require a lot of peak power. So the grid cannot operate. So when we talk about the transition from fossil fuels to renewables, you have to have a grid scale storage mechanism in place, and that to tweak very quickly onto the ground. And one more point I would like to mention, that unlike the IT sectors or other infrastructure sectors like bridges and all, they have a gestation period of 2 to 3 years only. When we deal with hydrology or geology, when we talk about the energy, where you are constructing dams, you are constructing tunnels, you're conveying water because of
So I would add something here, because I think decarbonization, globalization, digitization, plus there is a lot of thrust on the geo-specialization of all assets, and the urban planning which we have in India is also in power. But at this stage of time, when you are saying that how this transition will become a momentum, how it will become a movement for this entire country, I think immediately after the Pran Pratishtha program of Ayodhya, the first program or the first inauguration which our Honorable Prime Minister has done is the Surya Kiran program, that the solar one, to bring each and every household, also the MSMEs, in the mainstream of this decarbonization by changing the source of their whatever plant or household they have. Earlier, what I believe is used to be somebody's game who has a lot of money at the back to decarbonize the resource. Now it is becoming, or it is required to become, I am not saying that it has become a movement as of now, because we all sitting here, if we are not looking at the alternatives where we should decarbonize our source and where we should decarbonize our logistic and mobility, then we are not into that conversation yet. But it is, if it is changing the course, in this segment, what do you see that the solutions and the alternatives, greener, cleaner, sustainable, are only for MSMEs or large corporates or large infrastructure, industrial infrastructure, or also for small corporations and also for household? Now,
this question is for me.
You can, both of you can take up one by one.
Should I go first? Okay. So that's a great question, and the scheme that's been announced and what's already starting to get implemented is something that actually benefits each and every household. And if you look at social indicators, access to electricity and energy for extended periods, ideally 24 hours, is something that actually has very strong correlation to some of the other development indicators as well. Just everything from allowing kids to study for a longer period, making resources available, air conditioning. So just if you look at all the resources that suddenly now become that much more feasible for a household, is very high. Refrigeration as well, right? So and the cost that would be much lower, right? So at the right cost, resources available, strong correlation to social indicators, and in my mind, that benefit would be tremendous. I know it'll take some time to iron out some of the logistics and supply chain and so on, but the fact that it's being subsidized, to the extent of it being nearly free, because you're getting 300 units of energy, electricity at no cost, has a strong payback even for people who are not in that socio-economic zone. So benefits, social economic indicators, it makes economic sense from a cost perspective.
Right.
Honestly, can't argue with the merits of that at all, right? And the one gap that India has had, we've done very well in scaled solar implementations. One thing that we haven't been able to take as good an advantage of is rooftop solar. So this actually finishes that or completes that chain.
Cycle, okay.
Or cycle. Of course, storage is a different matter, which is something to be solved. But you can't wait for everything to be available in perfection. On one hand, EV sales are growing, right? So 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers. And that's happening even as we aren't yet fully decarbonized from an electricity generation perspective. Now, generation will also move towards renewable sources. So consumption, generation is obviously there, and storage is something that's going to come in.
So mobility is something on which I want to come back.
Of course.
But before, I want to go back to 𝗧𝗿𝗃𝗃 and understand that the way we have tax deducted at source, TDS, when we are going to have energy clean at the source, because India is going through a massive urbanization. Every minute 30 people from a village is now shifting and migrating to a city. They need power, they need energy, they need all household, and the carbon, everything required a certain amount of carbon footprint. And these cities are going to demand much more power in coming time. Maybe on the household level, they will not be able to convert to solar, but on the city level, where we are placed as per the grid connectivity, as per the source from where hydel, nuclear, micro-nuclear reactor, solar or wind, where we are placed in terms of giving power to new emerging cities.
Yeah, as far as the first thing which you asked about the, whether it is open for, small players. As far as solar and wind, and sir has talked about that can be managed like for subsidizing initially, and it is affordable, and then rooftop solar and all that. But I was mentioning and indicating about the other part of it. Like for example, what I feel that as far as this generation from solar, transition into renewables, and it is affordable for the smaller player also. But when it comes to in totality, in holistic view, there I think for the next 5 to 6 years it would be at a bigger level where the bigger investors, the bigger players are required to be more active and more aware of the things which are required, and of course the policy makers and the government. And as far as the second part is concerned, when we'll be having the energy at the source cleaned, well, there is no straightforward answers, as you know also, that we are still evolving our policies in terms of, the abundance of solar in last 5-7 years already impacted. 2 examples I will quote. When there was a, earth hour or something for 10 minutes, where we all switched off that all lights just to raise awareness about the sustainability. At that time, our demand in India was dropped suddenly in 10 minutes by 31 gigawatt. And during that 10 minutes, all our hydro plants and pump storage plants pitched in, and they matched almost 27 gigawatt. Maybe figures here or there, but that is how the curve of drop within 10 minutes, followed by the generation, switch on generation, which cannot be done by thermal and all. So those are the areas where already the policy is evolving, the framework, the incentives are evolving. Many progress we have seen. So I hope that in next say 5 years time from now, we have some 10 to 15,000 megawatt of hydro and pump storage in our country, and by the time we add say a similar amount or maybe double amount of that renewable, so then we can say that in a phased manner, by say 2040 or so, we are aiming at some 30-40,000 megawatt of a clean energy and clean energy storage. Then only we'll be able to join the dots, what we are thinking in terms of bringing in wind, solar, And I think by that time, the battery storage also will mature as a technology. As of now, the pump storage technology is a mature technology. So I see next 5 years a significant progress. And then from there on, the other technologies will also get matured. And as a combination of different technologies for energy storage, we'll see light of the day, and then it will drive the things which you have already outlined.
So you also wish to add something to it, right? To the same question, that how we are going to do the energy transition, particularly in the both aspects of the consumption of fossil fuel and also into mobility. Where do you see it's going, and how much time will it take to have a smooth transition?
Yeah, no, great question. So, you know, as we know, India is continuing to invest in thermal in the short term. And that's part of that is because storage is still not available at the scale it's needed. And the other part is that as India develops, you know, consumption is rising, and it's rightly so, it must happen, so it's the right answer. And so we have a short-term challenge where, you know, we don't have enough non-thermal energy available to support all of our citizens. And one thing that we are seeing though is, you know, as, you know, storage becomes, you know, I think you mentioned more mature, but then also the cost is also dropping, right? So that financing also is becoming, or will become more attractive, and will become actually, you know, positive IRR. In parallel, what's also happening is that newer sources such as green hydrogen and ammonia are also becoming available. You know, at least in our analysis suggests that India would be one of the lowest cost producers of green hydrogen. If that is the case, and we know that 50 to 60% of the cost base is from energy, and if we have abundant green energy, we have the, you know, green hydrogen therefore. And, you know, so say green ammonia, which is a derivative of hydrogen, can be utilized in power plants, right? Co-fired with existing sources.
Right.
So just like sustainable aviation fuel is a drop-in fuel into aircraft, existing aircraft, no modifications required. Similarly, green ammonia can be co-fired with gas or coal in existing power plants. So that transition will also happen. So my view is that there is no single pathway to energy transition for us. India will need, you know, continue to work on hydro, on thermal, but with you know, with blending or co-firing, you know, wind and solar, even nuclear. You know, you mentioned micro nuclear earlier, and I think there are a couple of projects that are already, you know, getting started. So it's going to happen across multiple pathways, and they'll all coexist for a period of time till a dominant pathway emerges. And that's the right answer for us, because energy independence is probably the best way for us to, you know, to truly get to a balance of payments position. Of course, Apple's electronics exports could also get us there, but but you know, as
so maybe Mr. Thakker, technology may coexist. There might be several paths going to decarbonization, hydrogen, green mobility, electric mobility, then ethanol. But coming back to the investment required for such transition, and such, all of them, they are micro nuclear reactor to hydrogen setup plant, all of them, they are very capital intensive. And when we look at climate financing, when we look at blended financing, how do you think banks and current NBFCs are placed to uphold such transitions financially?
So, you know, I've spoken to global banks, I've spoken to multilateral agencies, and I've spoken to Indian banks, right? Across all three categories, there is commitment to, you know, sustainable finance.
Right.
If you look at multilateral agencies, World Bank, IFC, etc., they are committed, they are already funding these projects all over the world, including in India. If you look at, you know, global banks, most of them have made public commitments to dedicate a part of their balance sheet to this, right? Of course, the challenge is, when you do green finance, does it mean that you accept a significantly lower rate of return? And of course, the question is, it needs to be as commercially attractive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And Indian banks also have, outlined similar investments into this, right? Now the question is that number enough? Right now it's not enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, with the examples that we talked about, cost of storage is already halved compared to last year, battery storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are finding that many of these businesses are now being standalone viable. These are new business opportunities for Indian companies, PSUs and private sector. And therefore, climate finance is increasingly a legitimate business opportunity anyways.
Mm. So you would like to add something, because your projects are also very capital intensive.
Yeah, I would add few quick points with regard to the investment. See, we are first of all, we must admit that we are talking over very huge numbers in terms of the energy transition. Now, as such, the gestation period of such projects of 1,000 megawatt or 2,000 megawatt, maybe hydro or other, it's huge. And secondly, unlike other sectors, they involve uncertainty. When we talk about investors, there is not a robust, data or bankable reports. And even the bankable reports on which the investors or banks can bank upon requires whole lot of process as to particularly the projects. Of course, the hydro and pump will definitely be dealing with geology and hydrology. So there is a huge amount of uncertainty. And the second quick point is the capacity of our country. Suppose if, say we are talking about 2,000 megawatt, those bankable report based on which the investment can be attracted or can come with a certainty that their investment will be, they will have the desired degree of return, will require a lot of capacity building as a policy in our country to bring those storage projects onto the ground. Battery storage are definitely coming in, but they are still maturing. And the scalability of battery storage, in my personal opinion, will take a lot of time. When we see pump storage, you can talk about even 3,000 megawatt
so
in one project.
My follow-up
so investment,
yeah.
I would just take your permission. You have a multi-pronged approach. You require multi-pronged approach at a policy level. One is the single window clearance. So the from concept to the ground doesn't take too much time, because that is also added. Who is going to fund? It will add to the interest during construction, or the clearances, and then the project is hanging. There are certain planned things which were planned when the investor thought that it will go this way, will get changed. So that is one part, that the faster clearance, capacity building of they should not work, as of now they are working in silos, so they should integrate so that the faster clearance of the bigger project comes onto the table, and then the investor can invest, and they are certain about the product that it will run for 50 years and they will get the return on their investment. These are some of the points which I would like based on our experience.
Very insightful. I would say very, very insightful, because these are those unknown terrains where even policy making organizations are blind to a certain extent. In large infrastructure projects which are involving geodata, which are involving very high impact risk of climate mitigation, in those everybody want to play safe, and in this playing safe we sometimes create regulations which are not supporting an ongoing project which is also requiring certain type of courage. How do you, just a small follow-up question with you from you is, how do you see those who have to decide on policies should drive in these terrain, because they also don't have a data, they have risk appetite is very low in bureaucracy, they want to be safe, they do not want to commission and approve something which has not happened before, and something which has not happened because there is no precedence, right? From the rule book for the standardization in the battery, in the solar, you have seen a long journey of battery standardization to the tech standardization. Still BIS to ARAI, they are still struggling between the standards. Now going forward, if we do something, what should be your prescription to do other than what you have said at this stage of time? It should be pilot, it should be more collaborative approach to do things and test on the ground, or we should keep on doing copy paste from policies from Europe or some successful countries. Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Both of you can answer.
Yeah, I'll just take this one.
Of course.
Yeah.
As far as the first part is concerned, I would just flag one issue as far as the battery storage is concerned. As you rightly said, that we should not copy paste the policy or maybe the experiences from Europe or USA, because in the battery storage also you're talking about the mining of lithium, and there are certain other areas associated with grid scale battery storage. If you are sourcing the material for battery, say lithium, maybe from our country, and then there will be a geopolitical, what you can say, the angle will also come as to how you plan to source those materials for meeting your target. That is one. And what was your second part?
Second one is, even for the policy makers, these
Okay,
projects and the
drive.
changes are very, very unknown.
Yeah. So I think as far as the sector which we work is very, quite, we have sufficient adequate data in terms of to correlate and then extrapolate as of now. Of course, not with the 100% perfection, but we have definitely quite adequate data in terms of planning the energy project, so that the policy makers can disseminate and examine very closely. And it should not happen that the project, their policy should be in such a way that a very big project is planned, and it is certain other plans are dependent on that particular venture, and because of the policy, some gaps in the policies, they result in a shortfall by 2030 by say 10,000 megawatt.
Right.
So at the policy level, my suggestion to drive is that to go very closely to the data available as far as the country, our country is concerned, which is quite robust. It's only the need to have a framework in place to disseminate, and then take the relevant part out of it, and then use it for policy making and evolving the policy framework.
But sir, your take on this.
Yeah.
What reforms?
So again, great question. I think realistically, it's going to be, I think what's needed, as you rightly said, is the right policy enabler to make, make these attempts possible to try, pilot, succeed, fail, learn, etc. But then also a strong collaboration between public sector, private sector, education institutions, etc., to bring some of these innovations out into the open, right? So we need rapid commercialization of these innovations, because 50% of what we need to get to net zero is still at conceptual or prototyping stage, right? So there's a lot more that is still out there that needs to be scaled up. I think storage being a great example, but that's going to need to get to net
One
zero.
last closing remark from you only, and then we'll come to Mr. Bharat.
So you can call me glass half full guy, but I'm very optimistic. I'm a big believer that India's time has come, and the best way is going to be, so Atmanirbhar Bharat is going to be a green Bharat, and I have no doubt that with the right kind of policy and collaboration between government, academia, private sector, public sector, etc., it can happen. Over to you.
Over to you, sir, for a closing remark.
We have actually, it was very insightful to hear from both of you. To end that, in my opinion, the change is a must. Obviously, the situation today that we have to change, but there are so many stakeholders and players to make that change happen. And I think there are two things. One is the change of mindset, because how quickly you adapt to the requirement of the change is going to be very crucial, because we have seen in India that the changing the mindset takes a lot of time, be it at the policy level, be it at the consumer level. So one that is very much crucial is going to be the awareness by these awareness initiatives. The people will understand, all the stakeholders, investors will understand that we have to change the mindset. And secondly, we should be looking at the processes very closely when we especially talk about the bigger changes in terms of the developmental projects. and bring in those policy initiatives as quickly as possible, so that that change, sudden change which we are looking at is seamless and in an integrated way, and there is no surprise element when we travel into that path for say 3, 4, 5 years, and then when we realize 2 steps forward and 4 steps backward. So everything has to be on table right now in next 2-3 years in terms of anything from the decarbonization point of view, from development or energy transition, energy storage. Things should be clear at every level so that there is no surprise element later on. So that is my two.
Very truly said. And I think I also remember once our Honorable Prime Minister said that approach badalna आसान है, सोच बदलना मुश्किल है. Why he said in a context of ease of doing business? Because over a period of time when politically India has gone through a licensing raj, not only to do the technical development, technical upgradation, but also from the people's life, which we call today ease of living. Right from filing a form for a job, you needed some attestation of some gazetted officer. In my time it used to happen. Now it is, your generation, it is not happening. To getting an Aadhaar card or ration card, or to license, or to car, or a phone connection, everything sometime, somehow, somewhere was connected with two type of people, either to bureaucracy or to political supremacy. And that approach is like you have to get a recommendation letter from somebody to get it quicker, faster, or at the other side you have to get some type of approach, somebody knows you, then it will become faster. So the political supremacy and the imperial bureaucracy, both of them, they were removed by making all these possible 4,000 customer services online. That is how we approach, not in a queue, but over a counter, but over a portal where you upload certain type of PDF and data, you can get approved. Today, right from Aadhaar to energy storage, something you need into passport to a voter ID card, everything has become so easy, but yet in the personal service space. I am looking for a new India, new Bharat, where this brings us to do businesses, and I think in last 10 years, the kind of ease of doing business ranking and the work done by the DPIIT ease of doing business wing has been very tremendously successful to remove more than 15,000 licenses and complications, yet to be removed, because what discussion which we have today, the fresh stream of thought and discussion which is required by the economy, maybe we may not have a single window clearance of the complex matters which we have spoken today, but those conventional business processes has been removed, has been made very easy by putting up a portal, putting up a system, and with this we have reached to a flight. No problem. Pleasure having you here. A round of applause for Mr. Thakker. So with this, we have reached to the closing of this session, and I believe we have been fruitful, helpful, and valuable to embark certain amount of information how India will go forward 2047. Thank you.